Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host Speaker. What's new, Speaker?
Same old, busy week. Everything's very hectic at the moment. We're just trying to sort things out. Big things happening in our personal lives, but we're still trying to get some videos out there. We're still trying to keep it up.
Yes, we are, and I'm doing pretty good. It is busy. It has been busy for me personally, but I did have a nice Easter weekend with the fam and with some friends. But I did catch some viral videos that came out over the weekend of people who didn't have a nice Easter weekend because of the authoritarianism. So it's definitely something we're going to get into today.
Yeah, definitely something that we thought we should talk about because this has been happening for a while and it's not happening in one place. Of course, it's through the majority of Western countries, and that is we're losing the freedom of religion.
Yes, it is happening, and we're seeing more and more of that. These heavy-handed COVID enforcers, and a lot of recent violations of religious freedoms. And I think we should really also touch on the broader scope of totalitarianism just taking over the globe, and some comparisons to the past, some ominous comparisons to the past. So let's start off with this incident out of London, the Polish Catholic Church in London last week. And we'll roll the clip and then just chat a little bit after that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this gathering is unfortunately unlawful under the coronavirus regulations we have currently. You are not allowed to meet inside with this many people under law. At this moment in time, you need to go home. Failure to comply with this direction to leave and go to your home address ultimately could lead you to be fined £200, or if you fail to give your details, to you being arrested. I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, though it is Good Friday and I appreciate you would like to worship, that this gathering is unlawful, so please may you leave the building now. Thank you.
To proszę wobec tego wyjść z kościoła, bo inaczej 200 funtów każdy zapłaci mandat.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
First of all,
it's like a parody, first of all.
Yeah. I mean, it's so blatant. First of all, Good Friday is one of the most important days for Christians to observe. And for these officers to just stroll in there and threaten people to either leave or get fined or arrested is absolutely sickening. The church has put out a statement, and they've said that these officers brutally exceeded their powers by issuing their warrant for no good reason, as all government requirements were met. And I did want to just make a note that the churches in London, under the current lockdown requirements, are allowed by the government to meet without limit on the number of people, so long as they're socially distanced and wearing masks. And I believe that they were doing that, but the police officers were saying that obviously there were some people who were not socially distanced or wearing masks. So that was their issue. But here's the fundamental issue at hand, is that, people of faith, they answer to a higher authority. And we believe our freedom to worship, and all of our freedoms for that matter, are given to us by God, not authoritarian governments.
You see, Edge and I, if you've been following our channel for a long time, look at these things from two different lenses, which I think is healthy. Edge is looking at this through a Christian lens, because that is her faith and that is her belief. So obviously it impacts her more on that level. And to me, I look at this as in a historical level, and I know where this leads. So it's just as important to both of us here looking at it in different ways, because
Yep.
I know where this goes. I know how this starts. And
Yes.
and you will see a video that we show later. the Polish pastor in Canada, when we get to that, he also knows where this leads, and you can tell that
Yes.
by the way he approaches these police officers.
But I think that these governments, these authoritarian governments in the past and the ones that we're facing today, they know this. They know that some of the biggest opponents of authoritarianism are people of faith and people and religious leaders, because they answer to a higher authority and they do not accept authoritarian governments as God. That's the key issue here. That's one of the reasons why I think that people of faith are targeted these days, is because these totalitarian regimes want to replace God as the ultimate authority, and they know that people of faith simply will not accept that and will challenge that.
Mhm.
So, um, but I think we should roll into that Polish pastor, unless there was anything else that there was something else that we wanted to talk about with regards to this incident out of London, because some riots took place after that.
Yeah, it wasn't directly because of this incident, but what's going on in the UK at the moment, and what we've seen for years, is the UK more and more extending this totalitarian move. I mean, people have been arrested over the last 3 years for thought crimes, for crimes they haven't even committed, for things they've messaged on Facebook. You can have a police officer rock up at your door in Britain. It's become very, very totalitarian in that sense, especially when it comes to free speech and lack of censorship. Um, but so what's happened here is I'm not 100% versed on it, but it seems like the UK government is putting in this bill which is going to limit uh, the number of demonstrations that happen, all the people that gather with demonstrations. Now, this has had an effect on both sides. And that's why I wanted to show it, because we all know the left love to protest. We know social justice has become a religion to them as well. And now it seems like these laws are impeding their worship. That's what I'm kind of getting out of it. So they're protesting really hard on this as well. So it's almost like they've come to a breaking point with government too, and it's restricting them now, like we knew it would. I mean, it always goes to the other way. Once you get used to pushing these sort of laws, then they turn on you.
Right, right. It does. I mean, people of all faiths, or even without, a specific religion or whatever, uh, we're all affected by this totalitarianism, and we all, uh, should be really, really focused on this as a concern, the suppression of free speech and of all of our freedoms, including uh, freedom of religion. So, I mean, it's something that affects all of us, regardless of what your faith or belief system is.
100%. And there was something a woman said in here, which I agree with, even though she's very clearly a leftist. That's fine with me. Um, she says that when you start restricting protests, a government starts becoming more totalitarian in nature, and she is correct on that. Even though she's on the other side, I might have not seen it, but she's 100% correct on that. That's that is the truth, and that is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I don't even think it has to do with party affiliation. I don't think
Mm.
it has
And
to
it
do with
shouldn't.
religious affiliation. Totalitarianism affects us all,
Mhm.
and we're seeing more and more and more of this, aren't we?
Yeah, I remember a tweet from the Australian government. This was the Victorian government during the peak of COVID down here, where they sent a helicopter to find some person that was camping by himself in the middle of the forest, and they were real proud of this tweet. Like, you can't run from COVID laws or some shit like that, and they were real proud of it. And they got hammered and had to remove that tweet because people were like, "Are you insane? This guy's camping by himself in the middle of the hills, right? Who's he going to affect? And you're seriously wasting resources and shit to find him $2,000?"
Insane.
It's insane. And
Collective insanity.
but the way they were so proud of it
Mm-hmm.
was
Right.
the mind-boggling aspect of it. Like, are you
Mm-hmm.
serious? Are you that daft? And things like this, which is it's dangerous because centrists, conservatives, more right-leaning people have always been the people that back the blue among anything else. But now we're seeing that sort of devolve a little bit
Right.
because of how
Right.
they're acting and because of things that are going on. And, you know, a majority of police are good, but the majority, a lot are not. And I think this is waking up to a lot of sides here that, you know, a lot of these people are just taking orders from the state and they are simply, you know, bagmen for the government. And that's how it starts.
Right. I agree. I agree. Let's roll into this other clip here that went viral. I saw this and it just made my day. It absolutely made my day. The righteous anger of this pastor was absolutely brilliant. So let's just play that.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. 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 Out.
Oh my gosh.
Immediately out. Immediately go out and don't come back. I don't want to talk to you. Not a word. Out of this property. Immediately out. I don't care what you have to say. Out. Out. Out of this property, you Nazis. Out. Out. Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed. Out. Do you understand English? Get out of this property. Go. So go. Go. And don't come back without a warrant. Out, Nazi. Out. Out. You understand? Nazis are not welcome here. Out. And don't come back without a warrant. Do not come back without a warrant. You understand that? You're not welcome here. Nazis are not welcome here. Gestapo is not welcome here. Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths. Unbelievable, sick, evil people. Intimidating people in a church during the Passover. You Gestapo, Nazi, communist, fascists. Don't you dare coming back here. Can you imagine those psychopaths?
Oh, that was so good.
It's so good, man.
Oh, we need more of that everywhere.
And they're coming to intimidate Christians during the holiest festival. Unbelievable. What is wrong with those sick psychopaths? It's beyond me.
So good.
Absolutely beautiful. And like, I situations like this, like when you hear him calling these people Nazis and all that, this is a Polish pastor. The
Mhm.
Poles are very well versed in what an actual Nazi is. And
Yes.
it's not like what you see in America, or if someone that doesn't agree with you automatically becomes a Nazi.
Right.
Someone that is right wing automatically becomes a Nazi. These tactics were used against people of faith, predominantly the Jews, during the Holocaust.
Mhm.
This is how it started. This is, just paint the picture 50 years ago. These were
Yes.
the intimidations that were going around the churches just then, before they actually started rounding them up or closing down their sects.
Exactly. And since that video went viral, the pastor gave an interview with the Daily Caller. If you, yeah, go on to that article, thanks. And what struck me was a quote, and it's kind of down towards the bottom, where he was kind of explaining why he had so much anger, why he said what he said. He said, I grew up in Poland under the boot of the Soviets, behind the Iron Curtain. He said, I grew up in Poland under the boot of the Soviets, behind the Iron Curtain. What I see right now, I see everything escalating and moving to the new level. They're acting just like the communists were acting when I was growing up, when pastors and priests were arrested and some were murdered. Many were tortured. That's why I say what I say, because I see a repetition of history. And it's so important that we look back on the lessons of history and we listen to people like this Polish pastor who lived it, because it is happening again. The Polish people endured through the authoritarian regimes of the Nazis and the Soviets. I mean, up to 3 million non-Jewish Polish citizens were killed by the Nazis, and 3 million Polish Jewish citizens were killed during the Holocaust. So the Polish people know all too well what authoritarianism looks like, because they've lived it, they've suffered through it. And just like this Polish pastor said, we're repeating that history.
And this is another good quote. This is unacceptable, he continued. Even during the times of the Middle Ages, the knights were commanded to leave their swords outside the church. They were not allowed to enter the church. But these days, nothing is holy for these people. They just walk in like it's a restaurant.
Yep. Yep. There's lines being crossed everywhere, just trampling on our liberties, particularly on religious liberties. And it's just so important that we remember that these totalitarian regimes of our past, they didn't stop just at targeting people of faith. They went on to politicians, civil servants, scientists, intellectuals, anyone who they knew would not bow down to them and threaten their authority over the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's why, you're concerned about it too. It's not that you are concerned specifically about religious liberties, but all liberties being trampled and people of all walks of life being affected by this totalitarianism.
Well, Western civilization was, the majority of Western civilization was built on a Christian foundation, right? Despite what you believe about religion, despite your affiliation, such as me, I've got an outside view of it, but religion was the thing that held common ground together between people, was faith. Now, in this time period, it's so broken up. There is so many different religions also intersecting with each other, and at stages, a lot of times, do not mesh with each other. And we've seen that cause problems right across history when two uh, different faiths clash together. I mean, we saw it all throughout the Middle Ages. But like I said, there's different ideas of worship now. There's different, and we've talked about the Church of Woke, and we've talked about that being a religion to these people as well. So you've got like this complete mixture and this complete breaking up of society that is coherent. It's just all scattered now. And
Yeah,
it's dangerous. It
is dangerous.
And that's why a lot of people frown upon mass immigration.
Right.
They're all
Yeah.
linked together.
They are all together. It's all by design. And what's really ominous about both of these incidents over the Easter weekend is that they were targeting the Polish community, which really does highlight that comparison to the totalitarian regimes of the past, doesn't it?
Hmm.
It is really ominous to me. But these aren't isolated events. They're happening more and more. And in fact, there was another incident just a little while back where another pastor from Canada was arrested just a few weeks ago for preaching during lockdowns. And his wife was on Tucker Carlson. And she said, toward the end of the interview, she was talking to to Tucker, he asked if her husband was being targeted because of his faith. And she said, well, yes, there really is a real enemy that's targeting people of faith. And she just went into this spiritual warfare aspect of it that we're currently fighting. And Tucker kind of closed the segment by saying that prior to 2020, many people really just wouldn't have taken that comment seriously, but now they are because we've all witnessed it. We've all witnessed this spiritual warfare over the past year and a half. And the good side of this, I think, is that it's caused a lot of people to kind of have a spiritual awakening around the world because of the authoritarianism and the spiritual warfare that we're fighting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a spiritual awakening in 2016. I think there was a mass spiritual awakening then. And I think we're having another one now, because now's a little bit different though, because it's, to me, not a upwards trajectory, but we're seeing this really fully hit the fan at the moment, and where it's going to go from there, we don't know, but it is escalating in nature and not de-escalating in nature. So it's a different sort of spiritual awakening, and it's one on the downside of realization that, okay, this is getting bad now. This stuff's happening every day. The people that are paying attention and that are noticing these things are like, okay, what are we actually going to do? We can't really sit back anymore. It's quite clear that the government's not in our court. How do we fight this, and how do we wake up to it as a community, as a group, and as individuals?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we need to learn from our history. We need to recognize the signs and the hallmarks of the rise of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. And we need to take a stand and say, what are we not willing to compromise? And I think that people of faith definitely are not willing to compromise their faith. And I think that it's just really a completely different perspective when you believe that your freedoms, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, whatever freedoms you have are granted to you by God rather than by the government. And and we don't have the clip up here, but I wish I'd thought of including this clip because this went viral too. There was a woman on mainstream news who was talking about the lockdowns and talking about vaccines and how she was just so disgruntled that some of these states were opening back up without enforcing the vaccines. And well, they all have been offering vaccines, but she was basically saying, look, the whole purpose of the lockdowns is so that we can dangle that carrot that if you get your vaccine, then we'll give you the freedom back. And
It shouldn't be a trade.
right, as though the government has the authority to give you the freedoms that we believe are granted to us by God. And it's just a fundamental difference in a belief system that it's either one side says, look, no, these freedoms are granted to you by God. Another side says, no, these freedoms are granted to you by the government. It's a different way of looking at things completely, and there's no really way to reconcile that.
And
So we just
sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
You're 100% of what you said earlier, that the government are afraid of religion or worship or faith in an aspect, because it does put something above them.
Exactly.
And hence why they do attack religion, certain churches, certain belief systems first before they try to dominate anything. And we've seen similarities of that, like I said, back in the 40s, during the Holocaust and the persecution of the Jews. But we've seen this also in more recent times, going back to the early 90s, late 80s, when China did the same thing to Tibet. The first thing they did was attack their monasteries. and tried to really break apart that history. It's very hard to find anything from that time period that is Buddhist related.
Yep. Long, long history of the rise of totalitarianism and the attack on people of faith. And we need to recognize the signs of these times that we're in and take a stand like that amazing pastor in Canada.
That's
God
that's
bless
that's
him. God
that's
bless that
that's
man.
complete righteous anger. And like I said, you see things like Nazis and Gestapo get thrown out a lot. This person knows exactly when to use it because he's noticing exactly what's going on. So
Yeah.
that's the only time I agree with someone, because it's become something that's used so much now that it doesn't really have an effect on you.
It
So
devalues the
it
actual meaning of it.
devalues the actual meaning. So when you see someone using it in jest, you have to actually notice that and pay attention to that as well.
Definitely, definitely. Need more people just like that pastor. So,
100% righteous anger. It's great.
yeah. Well, I think that's it for us today.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I just thought we really should put out a video on this and just share our thoughts on it, and just pay attention what's happening locally around you as well, and don't let these people trample on your freedoms in general or your religious freedoms in any way, shape, or form.
There you go. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us here on Hive Mind. Please be sure to share this video. We are on YouTube, BitChute, Foxhole, and Pill.net. And we'll see you back next time, right here on Hive Mind.